This episode of Beauty and the Surgeon podcast is brought to you by Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an online company dedicated to making professional health testing easy and accessible. Let's Get Checked offers fast, affordable, completely confidential at-home health tests from a range of tests from STDs, male and female hormones, and even COVID-19. Listeners of our podcast who are new to Let's Get Checked get 20% off by using our URL, trylgc.com/beauty, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. That's trylgc.com, trylgc.com/beauty, BEAUTY, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20, BEAUTY20 at checkout. Do it. Getting tested is important. It's the responsible thing to do, and you know how important I think it is to make sure you understand your labs. Welcome, everyone, to Beauty and the Surgeon podcast. I'm Amy. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I'm joined today, as always, by my very stoic co-host, Dr. Jason Martin. He's a board-certified plastic and reconstructive surgeon. Dr. Martin, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Amy.
You're looking very still today.
Well, I have my bobblehead there representing me. I'm at home on my couch.
Oh, there you
right
go.
Now.
I like this dynamic. I do feel a little lonely, though, without you here.
I'm just trying to figure out how we can do this with surgery, if that is possible.
I think we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, you're very quiet, so it would be a little different.
Yeah, just shake my head a little bit. Just give it. There you go. Okay, perfect.
Shake my head a little bit. This is like you in the OR asked me to push your glasses up.
Yeah.
Shake my head a little bit.
I got movement. I can animate.
Turn me to the side. Point me down.
I don't like that position. I don't want to show the top
Bring
of my
me
head.
closer to the patient.
There you go.
Yeah. So, Dr. Martin, you wanna join me?
Yeah, but I got to fix this up so Nils is happy. So it's never easy with that.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to tell everyone if they would like to watch this podcast, if they are listening, which I highly recommend. Yeah.
I totally forgot about the podcast part.
So if you're only listening, you have no idea what we just did, but if you would like to see the skit.
We're so crazy.
You can find us on
Just
YouTube.
crazy people.
At Jason Martin, MD. This podcast episode, there are not a lot of super interesting slides, but I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. Occasionally we do podcasts where Dr. Martin and I just get to chat a little bit more, and this is one of those. We're not talking specifically about surgery today.
Nope.
We were talking about things we wish we knew about aging and longevity, and a few things we got right.
So, Amy, why do we even talk about aging? Why is that important to us?
Well, plastic surgery is basically anti-aging surgery.
Right. And it's so inane. I don't treat aging. I treat the byproduct of aging, which is our physical changes.
For the symptom of aging.
I give you no cure for the problem of aging. Mm-mm. And it's very frustrating.
Well, that's not true. You give us somewhat of a mental cure.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. Hey, there's a lot that goes into seeing that with
You're
what you see in the mirror.
You're feeding into the whole PR machine right now, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, we do good work. People
you only look as good as you feel.
People are very happy with our results. We empower people, especially people that have had weight loss. People are getting older and their faces change and they feel better. That has value. So when I go to my grave, it will be on my tombstone. He did make people feel at least somewhat better. But actually and my bobblehead agrees, but the actuality of aging, it's just so frustrating. And so for Amy, we really want to know about aging so we can at least authentically talk to our patients in an educated fashion about what things you can do besides just surgery to make yourself better. And we do it ourselves. So this kind of conversation we're having today is the conversation that Amy and I have all the time.
Well, the world used to be a very different place. I mean, there's no denying that we are of a certain age, but who really thinks about longevity or aging until they get to the point where it's impacting their life or they're seeing the results in the mirror? I mean, at 18, was anyone thinking wow, I got to really be careful about anti-aging, especially in a world with no internet? Those were just not things.
I'm just trying to imagine me with my friends. Guys,
I got to take my supplements.
I got to put the sunscreen on. Yeah. Was there even sunscreen in the 1980s or 90s?
There was, yeah. Yeah, but it's...
I mean...
There's so much more now that's available to us to understand, but it really hasn't changed anything. I mean, the body still ages. We still can't stop that. There are things that we can do to maybe make it better, but we're a living experiment that we will never know the outcome of.
Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate part, I guess it's not unfortunate, it's just our reality, is that there will be somewhere in the future where longevity can be notably extended. And maybe that's in the next 50 years, but people like us may not benefit from that. So, and that's hard. That's a hard thing to mentally kind of wrap your head around, but it doesn't mean that you can't still try and do some things that will not only extend your life, but more importantly, will give your life quality, and that you have aging in a way. And that's when we say aging, we even mean in our 30s, and 40s, that you will age in a way that is net positive for you, that you will have quality of life. So you'll have functionality, you'll have brain activity that it allows you to interact with people in a positive way. Like there's so many different things about aging and longevity that can apply to your life just for a quality of life, from a quality of life standpoint. So this, I think this is very applicable. Now, someone in their 20s is going to like not watch this episode, but
they probably also are not watching episodes about facelifts, so
right,
that's okay.
But the person that should is somebody in their 20s. So
potentially, but like you said, the things that we're doing now, I mean, I even look at it like even over just the course of the last 15 years that you and I have known each other, like the things that I thought about aging then, and like the people who maybe thought they knew about aging, how do they look now? How has their life been impacted by this? Is it really that much better? And that's why I say there's a lot of chaos in the world of anti-aging. Everybody kind of has their theory. You know, there's so much noise.
So you got super science people. You got charlatans on the internet. You got normal doctor people trying to integrate some of these things. And those are the more holistic doctors and the functional doctors, but they're on the outskirts and there's no rhyme or reason to what's going on. And probably the big reason that is just the world of aging, treating aging and longevity is so vast and there's so many factors going on. Mm-hmm. And it's, in reality, done correctly, it has to be individualized. So it's, it makes it very difficult to find some narrative that works for most people.
Well, and I would say even for any people, because what you do can't be necessarily replicated. It can't.
Right.
Even when you look at studies of identical twins, and I think to me, those are some of the most fascinating studies to look at. You take identical twins that were separated at birth and see how their life courses went. You think that that's maybe the best you can get, but there's no ethical way to do blinded studies on humans. Yeah, and even if you did.
Right. And what is the study going to be 80 years?
It could be more than that.
I mean, it's so dumb. Like, it's like, oh yeah, we're just going to test and see if this works for longevity. Okay.
And I gave you data on those people.
We'll get a well-funded institute that's around for 300 years, like building a castle in the 1500s. It's like, none of this really makes a lot of sense. Now we will get there because basically you start with the bench research. You start with this basic science. And there's people doing that. There's well-known people like David Sinclair and other people like that. You'll start there, and then you find things that are helpful on a molecular level, and then you start applying that clinically, and you can look at markers that show that you're having some improvement. So there are ways to do this, but it's a messy world. Now, the second part of this is the biohacking part, which Amy and I love, and there's people like who, Amy? Like the ones we always say.
Like Dave Asprey.
Dave Asprey, who's pretty amazing, and all the information he has.
Peter Attia, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's really good stuff there. But honestly, if you listen to their podcast or follow them on the internet or on social media, it's just so complicated. You get so in the weeds. Like every week it's something new, right?
And it's almost always based off of animal data.
But even if it was not, like it's impossible for you as a normal human being to follow everything they're doing. You would have to have a full-time job listening to Dave Asprey and doing what he does. I mean, that's his business.
Well, and you'd also have to be him,
right,
for it to have the same result in you.
But so it gets very complicated. With all that said, Amy and I are very pro doing things for longevity. Okay, trying things, trying to figure out ways in your life to make it better. And it's never perfect. And Amy and I live that every day. And, we'll get off path here and correct there and do these things. And we find an immense amount of interest in this field. And what's really exciting for me personally, professionally, is that the future is very bright. And I think in the next 5 years, we're going to really see some advances and some improvements. But the topic today is, basically the things we got wrong and the things we got right.
Yeah, the things that we
I got
wish
a lot
we
of stuff
had
wrong,
known.
but yeah.
It's not even got wrong. It's things that you wish you could have started earlier,
right.
Like earlier in what you could have done earlier. All right, so Dr. Martin, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
You're up first on the things we wish we knew.
I don't even remember what I said. All right, here we go. Good.
So Dr. Martin, number one.
The importance of sleep. Amy, kind of go through why sleep is important. We have a whole episode on sleep, which is amazing, but can kind of give the summary of why sleep is important.
Well, specifically for why I think of it as related to like aging specifically and healthy aging is because when you sleep, it's really the time that your brain and the lymphatic system.
Your favorite word.
I just want to bring up the lymphatic system and the microglia. It's when they have a chance
agrees.
to.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
Bobblehead Jason agrees.
You have a chance to clean house. If you don't get deep sleep, your brain never really gets into this deep kind of cleansing mode. And that's really important for learning. It's important for memory, like solidifying memory, solidifying learning, and also just giving it a chance to kind of clean out the accumulated gunk.
Right.
You know, we look at degenerative brain disease, like plaques and amyloids that build up in the brain are very, very bad. So if you don't ever really get that deep sleep, you're never giving your brain a chance to clean.
Yeah, and Amy and I both have the Aura rings, which are amazing, and those follow your sleep cycles. That does not replace a sleep study, by the way. But Amy said they had a white paper that said it was pretty close.
Yeah, the closest of the sleep trackers.
Right. So it looks at your REM sleep, your deep sleep, and your non-deep sleep. Is that what they call it? Or light sleep. Yeah, and
which is also important. Like light sleep is important.
Very important. But that deep sleep is, I think, where the lymphatic system gets washed out. And you could sleep 10 hours and not have any deep sleep. It's possible. Dave Asprey, actually, who's big into sleep, talked about this. He's like, it's the quality of sleep, not the duration. They always talk about, if you read these studies in the New York Times or like, on Twitter or whatever, they're like, oh, if you don't have 8 hours of sleep, you're going to have Alzheimer's. That's not really the case. It's the quality of your sleep. It's qualis, not quantis. And the quantity does matter, but it's really more the quality. You got to get into those deep sleep cycles and those REM cycles.
The quantity need changes throughout life pretty drastically.
And it goes down, right? You're not going to sleep as long as you age, the older you get. I wish I would have known when I was 20 going into medical school that sleep was really important, because I don't think I slept more than 5 hours a night, in my 20s. And then going into residency and general surgery, where the whole mechanism is to try to break you down, almost like the army. And this is before they made some changes, necessary changes, and we would be so sleep deprived. I would be awake all night, every other night for months. So all the negative effects have already happened. And I can't put the genie back in the bottle, and I don't know if it could have changed them, but maybe I would have made some better decisions at that time.
Maybe, and that is true what you said. Like, you can't make up for lack of sleep. Like, so people who think like they can make up for sleep on the weekends, it doesn't really work that way. Like, it's not like you have a sleep bank. Getting more quality sleep when you can is obviously a good thing, but you can't make up for it.
Now, you do literally make up for it in a sense that if you follow your sleep and you sleep a couple hours and the next day you'll sleep a lot of deep sleep, more than usual. But that's not in any ways healing the problem of not sleeping.
Right. You can't get it back.
Yeah, you can't get it back. So the negative effects of sleep deprivation has already affected me long term. Now, I think that sleep is there's a lot more focus on sleep these days than it was in the old days. And so I think more people are aware that sleep is important, but it wasn't like, 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was not as highlighted as it is now. And definitely the longevity parts of it really weren't discussed.
Well, and maybe that's because we had less things keeping us from sleeping. There are a lot of things that distract a person from sleeping now, like electronic device usage. Go camping and tell me your sleep isn't better when you're not staring at a phone all the time.
I don't know how you camp, man, but I camp is like mosquitoes. It's hot. The kids are complaining. The dog is like barking. I'm like, okay, it's just a wolf, man. Don't worry about it. But you're right. If you can have like an ideal glamping, if you're glamping, okay, and you're out in the dark and you don't have your cell phone, I think you would probably have a great night's sleep.
Yeah, without exposure to artificial
light. Maybe
light.
Some running water, a light breeze.
EMFs, light exposure, like light pollution, like all of these things are degrading our ability to get restorative sleep.
Yeah, I totally
So
agree.
As our understanding of sleep goes up, so does our need because of our environmental changes.
Right.
Like drastically different from in the 50s.
Yeah, the blue light exposure is way more now than it was even 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah, you take a look, I would go back 50 years. That was, yes, there were TVs, but they weren't in bedrooms. There were no cell phones. There were very few computers that were used on a daily basis by your average person. Like, your sleep was totally different.
100 years ago, there were gas lamps.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. So things have changed a lot. And so the need for sleep is more important, but also the challenge of getting a good night's sleep is increasing as well.
Yep.
So
okay.
That was a good one, Dr. Martin. So sleep, the importance of sleep.
Yeah, that was a low-hanging fruit for me. That was like a big part of my life, the problem that I didn't understand.
But you can get better sleep now.
All right, I got it going on now.
Yeah. Oh, and the chili pad. You didn't bring up your Uller.
Oh, yeah. So Chili Pad, love Chili Pad. What's the other competitor? Sleep 8?
8
sleep or whatever. So Chili Pad's a lot less expensive. Again, we're not sponsored by them, so you can take this for what there's nothing. Don't read anything into these comments. Chili Pad's much less expensive.
I wouldn't say much less. They're on par for just the pad, not for the whole bed.
I think the pad is well. You'd have to look that up. You know better than me.
Yeah.
But anyway, Sleep Aid is great. It circulates cold water through a mattress pad. And you can get one for either one side of the bed or the other if you have a queen or king size bed, or you can do it for the whole bed. And it cools the temperature, the surface temperature of the bed down to whatever number you want.
Yeah, to help you get more restorative sleep.
Which allows you to get to deeper sleep quicker. Because when you get into deep sleep, your body temperature drops down. Right, Amy?
That is correct.
How many, like a degree or two?
Well, I mean, just ideal depends on the person. I mean, for me, I have my Euler set at 62. But I have it go up to 68 several hours into sleep because you actually want it to be slightly higher for your REM sleep cycle. So yeah, like between most people in a room that is like 68 degrees is like ideal to sleep at. I think for most people 68 might be good, but growing up in the Arctic that I did, 62 feels good to me.
Yeah.
I've turned it to low some nights. It feels good. Yeah, it is cold, but there are times I wake up and especially if I've had my hand under my pillow and it gets really concentratedly cold, man, you pull that hand out, you're like, whoo, it's chilly.
So my parents, they're older and they keep everything so warm because I don't know what is the thermoregulation with people that are
you
older?
lose fat.
Okay.
You lose your brown fat. So you lose your ability to thermoregulate. It's like a newborn.
Yeah. So, they kept everything at 76, 77. It was just very difficult to sleep in that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, the other thing I use for sleep, just by the way, I'm giving you all my little pearls, which have been on these episodes before, is a weighted blanket. Amy's not a big fan of the weighted blanket.
Makes you feel like me smothered to
I
death.
love it.
No, I think
and I wish I could carry a weighted blanket with me all the time.
Well, there's one in your office right now.
Just wear it like a cape.
I think you either like a weighted blanket or you don't. I am not an anxious person, so I'm not an anxious sleeper.
The bobblehead says no to that comment.
But for me, man, I put that weighted blanket on me, I feel like I'm being punished.
Yeah.
It does not feel soothing. It feels like punishment.
Yeah. I know that feeling. When you try to turn over in the middle of the night and you have to basically do a shoulder press.
Right. It's like you have to
turn.
shimmy yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something in my brain that it's a little off on that, but I think it's excellent. Weighted blankets has been shown to be helpful for sleep. Cooling your bed down or just having a colder room, it's been shown to be helpful. Taking melatonin at the proper time, taking magnesium. What am I missing? Oh, avoiding blue light after 6 o'clock or even 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
I'd say if you go to bed at a normal time.
And where you live.
Yeah. Dave Asprey, speaking him over and over, wears those red,
amber
kind of glasses to really filter out any blue light throughout the day. You want blue light in the morning. That's one of the fallacies. You want to go outside. Amy talks about this and stare at the sun, squint at the sun.
Don't stare at the sun. Do not stare at the sun.
Get as much of that sunlight. And the blue light's good in the morning. So if you're doing a lot of computer work, starting in the morning is excellent because it's good to wake your brain up. It all has to do with the pineal gland, or as I would say, the pineal gland.
I would say the pineal gland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the way that functions and the rhythm of its release, right? Mm-hmm. Of the hormones and factors that affect sleep. So I think that, trying to have good sleep hygiene is extremely, extremely important, not just for your life and mental health and physical health, but longevity and aging.
Absolutely. All right. So let's get to my number one.
Should we stop?
I know. I'm that. We're going to have a whole episode about sleep if we don't get onto the next one. So my number one is to learn the big three. And by big three, I mean squat, bench, and deadlift.
Yep.
Lift heavy and eat more protein.
Yeah.
These are things I wish I had done when I was younger, mostly because your ability to gain muscle as you age, every decade of life goes down to a point where you're really just trying to maintain. So for women specifically, this is a little bit different for men, but for women, the amount of muscle that you have, especially entering your 5th decade of life, can you grow muscle? Yes. But is it going to be extremely challenging? Yes. So really at that point, you're really in maintenance mode. So if you have not built muscle mass at that point, it's going to be very challenging. Your healthy lifespan, I mean, you look at hip fractures are a death sentence at a certain point. And why is that? It's because you don't really have the ability to recover. You are not musculoskeletal healthy enough to recover from those types of injuries.
Because of osteoporosis, lack of muscle mass, sarcopenia. And people are like, I don't get that. Well, tell me how many of your friends have fallen down and broken their hip? I mean, sorry, if you're within
Under 50.
Under 50.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
It's very rare.
And to break your hip when you're under 50, it has to be a high velocity injury, like you have to get in a car wreck
or you have a
bike
medical
accident.
condition.
Yeah. Or you'd have to have a medical condition, maybe kidney failure, things that would lead to osteoporosis and brittle bones, or osteoimperfecta.
Osteopenia. Yeah.
And osteoimperfecta, OI is the congenital problem where people have, fragile bones, which was Mr. Glass actually in that. What was that? Unbroken, yeah. So,
or Tony Romo, if you're a Cowboys fan. He does not have a musculoskeletal disease. He's just made of glass.
Oh my God!
Knock that man down, he has a broken bone.
He's an amazing announcer, though.
He is, but you put him, you push him over, he's a spine fracture.
I think he just gave him like $40 million, by the way, too. Yeah. So I'd rather be an announcer than be on the football field.
But sarcopenia is real, and that's muscle loss or muscle wasting as you age. And really interesting study came out in 2021 talking about specifically the interaction between myokines, which is what your muscles release, and its interaction with the brain specifically. So your brain is directly being triggered by myokines, which are released from the muscle, and they impact things like aging and neuromuscular degeneration is real. So there is a direct link between healthy brain aging and healthy muscle aging. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have it, it's very hard to get it. So I mean, even though I had parents who were extremely active, my mom, some of my earliest memories in life are of her doing Jane Fonda workout videos in the morning. She would get up super early in the morning and literally put on, it's the 80s, her like fancy leotard and do Jane Fonda in the living room. It was amazing. And my dad had a weight stack. I mean, they were very physically active people. So the importance of being physically active was very stressed to me as a child and as a young person, as a young woman. However, I didn't start actually lifting heavy weights until I was in my 30s. And some of that was access, some of that was knowledge. Eating more protein and just eating more in general, I think, are very key things. You know, we've become there are very interesting views around diet. And by diet, I mean just the food you eat. However, the importance of high protein diet cannot be understated if you're wanting to build muscle.
Because there's a big push in cardiology for vegan diets. People
which the data does not support.
Have ethical reasons to be vegan, which are totally fine. And Amy and I support that.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Well, I support it. But, one of the issues with vegan diets is the low protein intake.
Well, and the quality of the protein. So even gram for gram, the quality of the protein you're getting on a vegan diet is very low in leucine. It's very hard to get complete protein sources. Can you? Yes. Would you have to eat enormous amounts of food? Yes. And is that actually really the best building block for your muscle on a cellular level? It is not. And there is no denying that or getting around that.
Right. So what the kind of protein argument always goes to, well, these smoked meats. And don't get me wrong, I smoke meats on my smoker, which is probably not good.
It's not smoked, it's charred.
Well, they say smoked meats, whatever. So and even worse, preserved meats like turkeys and stuff like that you would get at the grocery store. So you get in these arguments and they're saying, well, this is like terrible for you. It's going to give you heart disease. You're going to die. Well, that's not the case. And it's just like so nuanced. And Amy teaches you this stuff when you actually listen to her. There's a whole spectrum of things, right? First, sourcing your food and how you prepare it and the type of food you eat. So it's very difficult on a vegan diet to get enough protein with all the associated components of that that will allow you to age without definitive sarcopenia for most people. And
healthy user bias is probably the biggest component when you're talking about some of these more fringe diets like veganism. However, I would challenge you to find a very healthy, strong vegan at a very old age.
Well, I mean, there's full-on documentaries on veganism that show healthy, strong, older people.
You can make a documentary with literally no scientific backing.
I got it. And you can find examples of anything. But the point is, for the aggregate, the whole cohort of this earth, all humans, veganism is, I don't even know how we got on this, but veganism is a difficult diet to also get enough protein in to age well. You can do it, but it's a full-time job. So, it's whatever the case is, strip all that away. Protein intake is one of the best things I did for my life at your suggestion, to change my life around and to have a more healthy body, to put muscle on, to have a better nutritional outlay per day of things that I eat. And you can do that if you approach it in a vegan way or not, but for me, it's made a big difference in my life. And I agree. I wish I would have known that earlier.
Yeah. I mean, this to me has nothing to do with veganism. Let me be really clear about that. That is not where I was going with this at all. I would not have brought up veganism in this conversation. Really, the key
So you're going to blame that on me?
No, I'm just saying that that's not what I was getting at.
I just got a real feeling like I was at home traveling with my family.
No,
the Uber didn't pick us up, and somehow it was my fault.
I don't want people to confuse what I'm saying with veganism.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry.
So that is not at all where I'm going with this. I'm not making this a diet-related comment at all. Yep. The key here is that if you want to age well, specifically as a woman, you have a limited time in your life to put on muscle. And you will not, as a woman, bulk up by lifting heavy. I wish it was easy to put on muscle and that I would suddenly get bulky and huge. I mean, it just doesn't happen. You don't have the hormonal signaling for it. It's just your body is not set up to do that. So
it's almost physically impossible.
Unless you're an assisted athlete.
Yeah.
You're taking hormone replacement in doses that are not normal. So the point is, when in your life do you really have the ability to put on muscle as a woman? Ideally in your 20s. Mm-hmm. Like that's really when you have that ability. The same is true for men too. I
mean, they can put on muscle longer, but the best time to put on muscle is in your 20s and 30s. And that's, well, at least for me, I didn't lift weights in my 20s and 30s.
Right. You're busy doing other stuff. And a lot of it is, you're busy with other lifestyle factors at that point, maybe having young children, like things that preclude you from being able to do that. I should have lifted my children. Right?
Yeah, because, come on, we'll do airplane. And do some bench press.
Airplane, yeah. So, those, because the time is of the essence with muscle building, I would highly recommend anyone, if I could go back in time and start lifting heavy earlier, I would have.
Oh, me too.
Like with intention, really being able to lift with intention.
Yeah, I would be 15 at the gym, dragging my lazy butt out of bed. Like, come on, man, you got to get out of bed, put some muscle on. Well,
and eating enough protein to actually stimulate muscle protein synthesis. I mean, you've got to eat to grow. And I don't mean that in a bulky or putting on fat kind of way, but really, I think you look at elderly populations and very rarely is their issue that they have too much muscle. I've never once heard that being the problem. So build it while you can. That's what I've got to say in any way possible.
Yeah, an increased protein intake from whatever source is positive toward satiation, and then the thermic effect of food. Protein's harder to metabolize. There's so many benefits of eating protein. And I think protein's got a really bad rap for whatever reason. It was so funny. It's like you just go through the decades. What was the bad rap in the 90s? Fat?
Oh, fat was, and again, that absolutely, I mean, I'm going to bring that up later.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Fat was the bad, and then carbs were bad in the 2000s. That's when Atkins came out, and now protein's bad. But I think that whatever the case is, protein intake, whatever your angle is important. I agree with that. And lifting weights, especially for women in terms of like quality of life and like empowerment and all the things that go on with that. Like even Amy did boxing, and that is technically a strength training exercise in some ways. And I was like, and that's so empowering, and it's like confidence building. And I think it's, these things all go hand in hand for a better life and a long life.
Yep. All right, Dr. Martin, I think we should take a quick break for our sponsors. We're going to come back for our number 2 and number 3 after we, let's get checked.
Yeah, let's get checked.
Dr. Martin, I'm super excited to talk about our sponsor for this podcast, Let's Get Checked. If you've been a listener of our podcast, you know that we have never had a sponsor before, and it's because we're an educational podcast. We're not looking to monetize, and we also would never recommend something that we didn't believe in and or use ourselves.
So basically you're saying we're very choosy.
We're very choosy when we come to our testing, but Let's Get Checked really aligns with our values. We talk a lot about monitoring your blood values of certain things. We talked recently about vitamin D serum levels. We talk a lot about hormone levels, and it's hard for some people to get to a lab, or you're afraid of the blood draw, or just, you're concerned about confidentiality. Like you have a lot of concerns and you just don't do it. Let's Get Checked makes it super easy because it's completely confidential. You do it from your home. So there's really no excuse not to do it.
Yeah, and we did it recently. Both Amy and I did it. She looked at her women's health, basically her hormone levels, and I looked at mine on the men's health side with testosterone. It was very simple. You go online. Their online interface is really easy to use and good. We got the testing kit very quickly, and the test itself, actually doing the stick, you do a stick on the end of your finger, is not hard to do. It only took about 3 to 4 minutes. You put it back in a sealed envelope that's confidential, goes back to them. You get your results in 2 to 5 days. It's really that simple. And the best part is it's about empowerment, about you taking control and trying to do things that are positive for your health and life. And this is one way to do it literally from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, so they offer a wide range of tests. So they do men's and women's hormone panels. They do a full panel of STD testing. They also are now offering a COVID-19 test at home. So there are a lot of other just basic blood levels that you can get tested as well. And one of the things that we always say is you can't track what you don't check. So you might not know what's normal for you in the future if you're not checking it now, especially as it relates to hormones. And men's health specifically, I feel like is a little bit undertreated. I mean, sperm counts are dropping by a large percentage in men these days. Most men struggle at some point in their lifetime with low testosterone.
And those men do not know what the symptoms of low testosterone are. Depression, anxiety, sleep problems, osteopenia or loss of bone, loss of muscle, and something we treat all the time, gynecomastia or male breast growth. These are real problems that can be improved or treated with testosterone. And these men do not know their levels. It's so easy to get checked. And this is why we're so excited about the sponsor.
Yeah. And Let's Get Checked is a completely CLIA certified lab, the CLIA lab. So they're a well-established, completely safe lab to use. You do get contacted after, so you get your results. I got a text at 4:30 in the morning, which I loved, that my results were ready.
And we're both up at 4:30,
yep,
so that was good.
Super excited. And you have access to not only a nurse, but also a physician. So a physician does review your results, and it gives you a little breakdown of like where you're sitting on those levels. Dr. Martin's had even comparisons of like where two of the levels should be in relation to each other, which is a really important thing to note.
Right.
Just being within the normal range is not always enough. So it really gave more information than that. You'd still want to, of course, reach out to your own doctor if you needed some additional assistance with these labs or you did see something that was concerning. We didn't, thankfully, so that was good.
Yeah. We were both good. This podcast is about empowerment. It's educational. In my private practice, I'm a board certified plastic surgeon. We are all about empowerment, and this is one way to do it. So we're very excited about the sponsorship, and we're looking forward to using it for our patients moving forward.
Yeah. So as a listener of our podcast, if you're also a new time user to Let's Get Checked, which a lot of you probably are, we do have a 20% discount code. So you do need to go to our specific URL, and it is linked in the description box below, but it's going to be TryLGC, so TRYLGC, like Let's Get Checked.com/beauty, BEAUTY. And you'll need to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. Beauty again is BEAUTY 220. And you can pick a test, like any test you'd like, put in our code and get your test shipped to you. Getting tested is the right thing to do. It's lets you know where you're at and what's responsible.
All right. Well, let's get tested.
Let's get tested. Let's get checked.
Let's get checked.
Yeah. And we're back.
We're back.
Dr. Martin, is there a test that you could test for sleep with Let's Get Checked?
I don't know, just like a picture of yourself, send it out to everyone, see how you look in the morning. Because
right.
Sometimes I wake up and I look in the mirror, I'm like, what happened last night?
Right.
Like, what? Did someone just come in and punch me in the face?
So there is not a Let's Get Checked, but there is a mirror test for that.
Yeah, the mirror test. That's what I would call it.
Dr. Martin, let's get into your number 2.
I don't even want to talk about this one. You read it.
How stress impacts the mind and body.
Oh my God. Okay. Number 1, sleep was terrible for me, but like the stress, that's 2 strikes. I might as well just roll over now.
I think you look it up. The best example to me of how stress impacts the body specifically is look at a president on his first day of office versus when he leaves.
Yeah. Besides Trump, because Trump somehow doesn't change.
Well, when you're
orange and big. And,
when you're fake going in, you can be fake coming out.
I don't know. That guy, it's amazing. He just literally looks exactly the same. So, but like, yeah, and Republican or Democrat, everyone relax.
You're just trying to bring in, let's bring in controversies for every possible subject.
I'm not trying to. That's the point. Like, I really am not. And I don't care. I don't care. I'll make that very clear. But like, I do think that stress really is such a negative thing. And Amy, why is stress overall so bad for longevity and aging?
For me, the first place I go to with stress is inflammation. When you're very stressed, you're in fight or flight. Your body is not understanding what's happening. The stress that we have as a modern society is kind of like a slow burning flame. It's very insidious. Like you're dealing with a lot of stressors that you didn't have before. I mean, I brought that up before. I mean, the type of stress that we used to have was more acute. It was less of this just insidious anxiety. I've got this. I've got to sit in traffic for 4 hours. It was
like if you're like working the fields and all of a sudden a bear ran after you, you'd run. And then it was over,
right.
And
you go home and sit around the fire.
You sit around the fire and say, "Oh, the bear chased after me," Nowadays, it's just incessant, and then social media has amplified that. So basically, social media now to everyone is like what I went through in residency. It's like this incessant gnawing stress that never goes away. And
That's self-imposed, though.
Right. And that's the sad part.
Yeah.
It's just self-imposed. Like, this feeling of overall suppression and anger and frustration and stress.
That you're inadequate, all those feelings that you get when you pull up social media.
Yeah. And, stress for me was self-induced. I chose to go to medical school and in training, and that's okay. And I chose a field that you can't mess up. So that's okay too. And I accept that. And I'm okay with it. It's a trade-off in life, and I've come to accept it, but it has a consequence. And that's where trying to find ways, which I'm terrible at, about mitigating stress and finding mindfulness, or whatever the perfect term is now. It always changes, like every decade, but mindfulness and things that offer you quiescence and quiet and relaxation and centering yourself are so important. It's so funny. Like, I tried so hard to be a good surgeon, and then I become a good surgeon. And now I just realized that that's not what it was about. It was just trying to find my center in the surgery realm, to figure out my stable center where I could really perform and feel comfortable, right? Well, that's what I trained to do. You should do the same in life, Try to find that center where you're comfortable, where you can relax, surround yourself with love and friends and happiness and protein, all the things that make you healthy. And I think that that's something that I've been working on now, but I didn't do that when I was younger. And I don't think most young people, that's why people do some of their best work when they're young, scientists and otherwise, and athletes, because you can endure a lot of stress and kind of work through it, but it has a consequence.
It does. And for some people, that consequence is very immediate, right? Especially for professional athletes. Like, they may be able to stress their body physically for a period of time, but ultimately at some point it gives out. Like, you crash, you burn out your adrenals, like things end, So it's always interesting to see that person, though. And I think about this with ER doctors, right? You see those people who like almost look like they thrive under stress. That stress, that specific stress.
That's me.
But that doesn't mean that they can thrive under any stress. And usually those people have really amazing ways to deal with stress in the rest of their life.
So it's funny because my wife lately has been like, what's going on with you? Like, things are bothering you more. And it was just like, I think the candle gets burned so low. Mm-hmm. We're all human. But there was times in my life where nothing would bother me.
But that's not good either. That's actually really bad.
Right. Like, if you actually think about that, that's unhealthy.
That's very bad.
I'm not processing anything.
Exactly.
I'm like, well, yeah, I'll work around this. I'll work around that. It was basically, everything was a workaround. You throw something in front of me, I'll jump over it, go underneath it, go around it. I'll fly over it. I'll do whatever I need to do. Me and my bobblehead, just keep on going. And I think that's really changed as I've gotten older. But I do think some of that's maturity and understanding my place in the world, and the blessings that I have, and the luxuries that I have, but also the fact that I'm not perfect. And I think once you get there, then you have to find healthy ways to do it. I think average person goes to counseling or therapy. Some people take medications for stress. I try to avoid that. If I personally would try to avoid that if you can. And then they find activities that give them relief. I find that with being with family and loved ones and friends. I find that with art and drawing, with my little puppy Yeti. He helps my stress. Until today, he made me stress because he took a whole roll of toilet paper and started eating it. And he started eating it. And he looked at me like, "Why are you mad? Like, what do you think?"
He was probably looking at you more like, "You want to get in on this?"
Yeah. You want a little bite of this?
Like, hey man, look what I found.
Paper.
Yeah. This stuff's pretty good. You want to eat some of this? Like, hey, alpha dog, you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Listen, man, you're my guy. Just have a bite.
Yeah.
So,
but stress on the brain too. All those things. Like, I think we sometimes feel, especially when we're young, or like being young, and things we wish we knew sooner, was that we were going to live forever.
Right.
And that there would we would never not feel as good as we feel now. And then when you realize that, maybe you've burned stuff down, like, what do you do now?
Nils had the money, Forever Young would be playing in the background throughout this whole episode.
The Jay-Z version or the other
the old one. I want the 80s one.
Who was that? Wasn't Peter Gabriel? He sang the original.
No, it was a German band. I don't remember the name of the band. Nils, look it up.
Yeah, it's good. Yep. So stress.
Yeah.
Sleep and stress.
And that's why it was touching, because like Germany, like people don't remember, like Germany was in war, and 1980 was only like almost less than 40 years from when they were in a world war and like in a very problematic way.
Yeah.
And Forever Young is very touching that it came from a German or even European derived band, right? Because it was still part of their zeitgeist at that time. Now we're so far away from these things, you know.
Who was it?
Alphaville.
Alphaville.
Yeah.
84.
1984.
Would have never
Yeah.
gotten that.
Yeah.
Oh, Alphaville?
Alphaville.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got sleep, you got stress, you got the S's going. I don't know
Yeah.
what your number 3 is, but I'm hoping it's an S word. All right.
Sex?
You wish you know more about it.
Yes.
Hey, there's actually amazing longevity benefits to sex. So
Yeah.
yeah. But that is not my number 2. My number 2 is that I wish I had understood the beauty and wisdom of whole food nutrition and ancestral diets.
Oh, yeah.
And I say that because I was fortunate enough and I'm old enough to have been raised in a time where that was still very much the way. You know, my grandmother had a garden. I wouldn't eat pickles because I was seriously disturbed that she would wash them all in the bathtub. And I just, in my young mind, I'm like, I've seen my brother poop in that bathtub. So I'm not going to eat those pickles. She'd gather them all and like dump them in the tub to wash them all at once before she made pickles. So I really, I feel, and I realized this when I went to school for nutrition, that I was set up so much better for having a good understanding of food and proper ways to prepare food because of my upbringing.
Yep.
My mom was terrified of the microwave. Like she literally wouldn't let us be in the kitchen when the microwave was running, but we could walk right through when the pressure cooker was about to explode. Just those things. I didn't get it as a young person. And I wish I had gotten that more and had not been so kind of taken off track by the low-fat dieting of the 90s and food shaming and like body shaming that came with the 90s.
And then the 2000s too, I mean.
Early 2000s too. I mean, in a different way, but I mean, specifically in the 90s. I mean, I remember when Olestra chips came out and I had friends who would literally eat a bag of Twizzlers and drink a diet soda because they thought that was healthy. When we all thought that fat made you fat, and not understanding.
I drank Diet Coke for decades.
Because you thought it was healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's a healthier choice.
Right. So I think that I wish I had never gotten off track in that way. I mean, obviously I've been able to course correct and I feel really fortunate that I have that knowledge to go back on. But man, I feel bad for people who were maybe raised by parents who didn't have that background or that stability of like ancestral cooking and nutrition.
Yeah, and some of that's like more of a rural background. Like my mom definitely always had gardens. I remember her making pasta and pulling out. She made a pasta, and I remember this vividly, with pasta, basil she picked from the garden and olive oil, sauteed with a little bit of onion. It was like the best pasta I've ever had. So I think that, if you're exposed to that, then it means more to you because it has an emotional connection to your childhood. But in reality, a lot of people just don't have that luxury. There's food, what do you call it, deserts, where people just don't have gardens. They weren't raised
or don't
that
even
way.
have access to a grocery store.
Right, that has like Whole Foods. And,
they have a gas station or a convenience
so
store.
if you were raised and that's the way you were raised, I mean, that's all it's going to be hard to break that cycle. And that's not just socioeconomic. I mean, you could be somewhat affluent and not be raised in a place with the Whole Foods were a primary focus.
You could get all your food at Whole Foods and be eating a very bad diet.
Exactly. So I totally agree with you. I wish I would have known this earlier. This would have made a big difference in my life personally.
Like canning, I mean, all these things that like soups and stocks and like slow cooking and, real nutrition, like grinding your own flour.
Right.
Like
even preserved foods like kimchi and all this kind of stuff that has such an amazing benefit to you.
Yeah, fermented foods. My mom used to make her own yogurt. I mean, like dried her own fruit. Like some of that, yes, came from the fact
My mom would make her own bread.
Yeah. Oh,
I remember going to the co-op and she would get the grain, like the special type of flour and grains to make her own bread. And it was only at this place, we'd go to this co-op and we'd come, and it was a whole day affair, I remember her getting shipments of peppers from New Mexico, and she would make chili rellenos, but it was a whole day affair. Yeah. And she would peel the peppers, and these were from a farm. They came in a burlap sack. I mean, does anybody know what burlap is anymore? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like it had like a stamp on it. I was like, this is cool as hell. And it's unfortunate. It's harder to do that now than it was in the old days. And I think
it's only harder though because we've gotten so far away from that. We've become very detached from where our food comes from.
Yep.
I mean, my favorite example of ancestral whatever, or whole food nutrition was when, growing up in the mountains of Colorado, not a lot grows at 10,000 feet, but what does grow is bitter and hard to get to. So we had a chokecherry bush in our...
Bears love chokecherries.
They do, so there were a lot of, but we had picked all these chokecherries because my mom wanted to make chokecherry jam and she'd make chokecherry syrup, which is delicious, but chokecherries are tiny and they have a very big seed in them. Well, so I remember this so vividly. So my dad had all the chokecherries like in a cheesecloth and he was squeezing it with his hands to get the juice out, right? Like literally manually squeezing these berries to get the juice. Well, the pits were so sharp that they cut up his hands, but then of course they're dyed like this deep purpley red. So like for days after, it looked like he'd strangled a Smurf to death or something because his hands were like
purple
and cut up,
Yeah.
But like, I think that just shows like what we used to do to get food.
Right.
It wasn't as easy as going to the store and buying jam. Like I think it gave you so much more like deep, like gratitude and appreciation for where your food came from.
Right. And then COVID really showed us how removed we are. I mean, it's supply chain dependent now. In these kind of factory situations, COVID comes in and then we don't have chicken or we don't have this.
Right. Because it comes from so far away.
Right. And it's like bottlenecked into this one area. So, I think the thing is not everyone can grow food, but to understand the value of whole foods and to make that a priority in your life on a continual basis.
Well, and understanding that there is innate wisdom in nature. And I've talked about this on our podcast, where the ones where we talk about research we're into, where we isolate nutrition or isolate nutrients and think that they're going to work. The German study with quercetin looking at apples. Like, you can't, you can isolate a nutrient, but it's still not as powerful as the whole food.
Right.
And that's what I really wish I had understood. And I mean, you're young. You when you're young, you don't get that. But I am glad that I at least had that in me to draw back on. Yeah. And can share that with people moving forward.
That's the best thing you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you change people's lives in that way. So I agree with you, though. Awesome. Awesome point.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Martin's number 3.
More about the basics. Yeah. Nutrition, hydration, mindfulness. Again, this is kind of summarizing some of the other things, but in reality, is it kind of making things a little more simple than not? I remember times like, dropping a little bit of weight, you do the Atkins diet or all these kind of things from a nutrition standpoint. I remember times like not even worrying about hydration. I remember times.
You mean like 3 months ago?
Yeah. Exactly.
Elements. Check out Elements.
I just wish I would have had a lot more structure in my early life. That's what I mean. And I had tons of structure, but it was imposed upon me. I didn't have choices. And I wish I would have had that. Again, I don't regret what I did, but I think it really I lost out on a lot of these things, which I'm doing now. Well, so it taught me a lesson, but I think that it was fool me once, fool me twice kind of thing. So,
but really, what were you taught about any of these things?
Nothing, never.
You were probably taught the food pyramid, because at the time when you and I went through school, food pyramid was still a thing.
Nothing.
Right? Hydration was
never.
There, you know what it probably was actually that there was milk in the dairy part of the food pyramid.
I don't even remember. I mean, I remember playing soccer and people I remember the coach saying, you got to drink water so you don't throw up or cramp.
Yes. Or die.
There wasn't even a conversation about death, and it was only about the outcome of the game. I really, and I love my soccer coaches, but I do not think that they were overly concerned about my health.
No.
Or my kidney functioning.
Exactly. And mindfulness, same thing. Like,
please.
When was the first time you even heard that word?
I think last week. Literally.
This was just, so it's not your fault. These were things that was my point about whole food nutrition. Like, these weren't things that were taught to people, and they're still not taught to people in a lot of ways.
Right. I think the biggest thing you can do in your life is get back to the basics in certain things, and especially with aging and longevity, and start from there. And then you can add all the fun stuff that all these biohackers do. But the basics are there, and most people don't do the basics well. Think about yourself. How is your nutrition on a daily basis?
Can't I just take a pill for that?
Right. How is your hydration on a daily basis? And how is your ability to not just manage stress, but to really search for mindfulness? How is that?
Definitely a pill for that.
Yeah. It's just called Valium. And that doesn't solve the problem. So, nobody does these 3 things well. You'll pick what most people do, and me included, is you'll pick one thing. Now I'm on hydration right now, but then maybe the nutrition suffers a little bit. So it's hard to do all these things. But if you could have created in your early life some sort of foundation that you would rely on throughout your life, it would have been great.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something so key, specifically related to the aging component of this, People are always looking for something else and failing to look where it is. There are things that we absolutely know are beneficial for healthy aging. Proper nutrition, hydration, and mindfulness being key things.
Reminds me of the song, I like pina coladas, when he was like...
Getting caught in the rain?
Getting caught in the rain.
Isn't that a song about like cheating on your spouse?
Well, no, basically he and his old lady, they were like not good together.
Till they went and slept with other people.
No, he was looking out, right? He was trying to find something else. He put this ad in the paper and they were meeting up at the Point, whatever bar that was. And it was her. It was all there right in front of him.
Mm-hmm. It was always her.
So that's very, it's like a...
She just didn't know that he liked...
That's very analogous to life.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like a lot of this is right in front of you. And we always are searching, and that's okay because
these are things that will not negatively impact your health and longevity.
It'll only make it positive.
Exactly. So like doing no harm is absolutely key.
And then also, if you don't do it well, don't be mad. Nobody does this stuff well besides a few people. So
we all do the best with what we've got.
Yeah. Try every day.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a really good one. And so fundamental to aging.
Yeah.
So fundamental.
See how basic this is?
People will spend thousands of dollars on supplements, but they won't just drink water.
And the irony is you'll just pee those supplements out through the water you're drinking.
Well, you won't even break them down because you have no ability to digest.
Don't get me wrong, I take supplements. I'm not, okay.
Yeah. All right. My number 3. Meditation and body appreciation.
Nice. I think the second one for you, for sure.
Your body is a wonderful gift.
Yeah.
And it's not just me.
Your body is a wonderland?
Your body is a wonderland. I mean, gift. I mean, if you listen to our podcast that we just did recently about scarring, I mean, wow. I mean, you almost can't even think about it. Like how many things are going on in your body all the time that you don't think about and that you don't have to think about. Like even I thought about, this morning, like lifting weights. Like, yeah, there's a mental component of me like making myself do it, but like my body is still doing so many things that I'm not even aware of.
If you have a heavy weight over you, all the corrections that are going on in your body that are occurring like without your knowledge is nuts.
Yeah. And you're still doing other things like breathing.
And I'm lifting weights, heavy weights, and I'm listening to a song, thinking about work, and then my mind goes off to like, a family thing or something. And meanwhile, I'm lifting something super heavy over me. Like, and don't tell my coach that. But like the point is like it's amazing what the human body can do.
It's amazing. And the appreciation for that. And I think it makes you think about all these other things, right? Like that it makes you want to treat your body better, and you may think that body appreciation has nothing to do with aging, but I tell you what, there is not a person alive who has walked into this office who hasn't wanted anti-aging surgery, which is what plastic surgery is, because they wanted to look how they looked when they didn't appreciate how good they looked.
Mm-hmm. That's the real irony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And you hate it in the moment. We spend so much time feeling very negative things toward our body. And if you're going to go back to like our brains are super powerful, which they are, they're basically the most powerful supercomputer that could ever be made. Those signals you're giving yourself have an impact and they lead to stress. I mean, if you wake up every morning like, wow, I hate myself. I look terrible. My body sucks. That's the message you're giving your brain every single day. And like, how sad is that you would spend 1 second of your life thinking that?
Yep.
What a waste.
And you can change your neural pathways around with like negative thought processes all the time.
Yeah, neuroplasticity works good and bad.
Yeah. So I think body appreciation is like hugely important and something we embrace in our office because we want to not be, like these like a sham place where you would come in for self-improvement.
Well, that doesn't actually help.
It doesn't help, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have that conversation with people and say, improving these problems in your body is the first step to body appreciation. Or the last step or whatever. It's one step in this process, which is pretty long. And the major part of this process is to first start and realize that, a lot of the stuff that we're faced with in social media, in our culture, in our life, in our relationships, and many of those relationships aren't great. Create an environment in your brain that are so negative and so outlandishly not correct that a high majority of people that come in our office to look better, they already look pretty darn good.
Well, or they look amazing. They look incredible. They look how people would beg us to make them look.
And they still aren't happy. And
they'll never be happy.
Right. And that's really devastating for us. So we're trying, even though you can't get into people's personal lives, we're not their counselors or anything. We try really hard to make people understand that they are wonderful the way they are.
Well, and I remind people of this. It's such a trite saying, but like you're older than you've ever been and you're younger than you'll ever be again.
Yeah.
So you are younger today than you will ever be again. You're also older. So understanding and appreciating that, I mean, I think that to me is absolutely key to aging. Understanding that like you need to appreciate every stage of life as it is and make it the best it can be rather than wallowing in the past. Oh, I wish I looked like this, or, oh, when I looked like this, I did this, or when my body looked this way, I did that. Then start thinking about the future. Like when I'm sitting in a wheelchair, this is how I'm going to feel. Like start lifting weights, sleep, meditate, like do the things that are going to make your future life better and appreciate what you have in the moment.
Make a meal with whole foods, nothing preserved. So
Dr. Martin, I know at the beginning we said that we were going to talk about a few things we got right, but I feel like we spent so much time talking about the things.
You're too loquacious. You talk too much.
The things we wish we'd known that I think it's only right to do full justice to our things.
To be fully honest with anyone listening, we could do this for about 5 hours straight.
That's right. Well, because it's rare. I mean, like, yes, we work together, but like we don't get much of a chance to just talk.
Right.
I get into really fiery subjects.
These are
like
our
diet.
passion topics. So it's probably better to split it up, which is hilarious because that's going to be one more episode where the backdrop's not done.
That's true.
Just one more.
That's true.
It's not going to. You're not going to have a new backdrop until December.
I did say September.
Okay.
So
that was good.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening so far. I highly recommend tuning in to our next episode where we're going to talk about the things that we got right by default or whatever, nature or nurture. If you would like to leave us a comment, we really appreciate it. You can also leave us a voicemail. 303-630
Bobblehead will tell you how to
9038. You can also comment, share us with your friends. All those things really do help. And the things we got right is definitely going to be worth tuning into.
Yeah, you got to listen.
All right. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Don't forget to check out our sponsor, Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked offers fast, affordable, and completely confidential health testing for everything from STDs, male and female hormones, and even COVID-19, right from the comfort of your own home. And remember, new customers and listeners of our podcast get 20% off by using our URL, trylgc.com/beauty, and be sure to use the code BEAUTY20 at checkout. That's trylgc.com/beauty and use the code BEAUTY20, beauty, BEATUY 20 at checkout. Get checked. It's the right thing to do.